Hi, time for another edition of Simply Stated. And for this edition, we will actually be talking about the specifically that I was given information recently that I could fully state and name the company that labor trafficked me for so many years, and that's Endeavor, WME. And it's important to understand that it does relate to current events in the sense that former President Donald Trump has had an extremely hard time with them, that's part of the reason he's in court in trouble now, that current President Biden has had trouble with them. That's why he is now actually undergoing his own political problems, whether it's impeachment or simply being cross-examined on a regular basis and investigations around Burisma. And it's important to note all of it because, it ties back, it's going back like to my childhood and even more recently, within the last 20 years and more recently within the past few years because I managed to get out of the trafficking situation in 2015, but I've not been able to get away from attacks and issues from that company, and it's actually not a real company. It's a terrorist organization that's part of the FSB and the old KGB out of Russia. It's a Russian company. It was founded by Russians. And I've already explained to you the issues with the ethnocentrism and, of course, the relationship to the Chinese CCP as well, and the issues of modern-day slavery here in the U.S., the U.S.A coalition with the U.K. and the Anti-Slavery Act. They work with Australia on those issues as well. They're really not interested in working with a company that is so firmly embedded in Russian and Chinese practices here in the U.S. And that's what's important to understand. I say all this even as Russia has now decided to dock ships in Cuba in preparation for attacking the U.S., which is really horrifying, but that's what's going on today. And you need to understand all this in context to that company was responsible for shootings in Charlottesville. They were responsible for the dry runs done by Meghan Markle and her husband over in New York. Meghan Markle is no longer considered a princess. She and her husband have been pushed out of the royal family. It's important to understand that there was also the attack on the U.S. Capitol. There have been multiple issues. I've named 4 really big issues that affect the U.S. that are all tied back to the same company and its founder. And as far as he goes, the man nicknamed Kendrick, it's important to understand that as far as I'm concerned about him and Buffalo Bill, these really are just dumb old men who mean nothing to me, and there was never any significant relationship other than they were people who thought it was okay simply to abuse me and traffic me and beat up on my mother. And it's unfortunate that Christopher Wray made the decision to try and support them instead of supporting the country. He's supposed to do counterterrorism and support. Oh, and we can look at Hawaii as well, because that's all tied back to them as well. It's very directly tied back. And it's important they realize the people who, have supported them are people who've also lied to them. And for me, I think the big issue really is that in my modern day life, I don't appreciate other people coming to me and getting angry and saying they don't want decisions made for them because of that company. Well, the fact of the matter is, I didn't appreciate that company trafficking me. And I didn't appreciate people asking me to work for free and demanding I do such for quote unquote investigations or whatever it was that these people were inventing in their heads when I was down in the DC area, because it went on way too long. I'm somebody who clearly was supposed to have gone to medical school. I had my medical school money stolen. They actually bothered to interrupt my nursing school program. They actually tried to demand I go do free work for JLo during my nursing school program, and I had to leave my program. I've been attacked and assaulted repeatedly by them. Those 2 women who were literally missing limbs and on life support in Charlottesville because of them. Okay, so, and this all has to be understood in the context that Russia and China regularly attack the U.S. now on a fairly regular basis. Every time anybody says anything that comes close to ruffling the feathers of this company, because that's who they're really dependent on. And that's the level of severity we're at. Okay, so I just want to make sure everyone's really, really on point with what's going on. When I lived in the D.C. area, it was really obvious that there was a woman named Sarah Bonner that worked at the Chamber of Commerce that was working for them, so she was undermining relationships there for people. And it was very much a pro-Russia, pro-China person, but she managed to blend in during the G.W. Bush administration. None of this is to pick a party or a side, because they've clearly stated for you both parties have been undermined by them and the work for the FSB. We can go back to what happened in Janesville, Wisconsin. We can talk about sometimes it's just hard to deal with the reality of it all. But I mean, the fact of the matter is that if you want a really small example, I would go back to like Jessica Simpson's old song and video Irresistible, because she was talking about the trafficking that was being set up by that company back then. And so she makes this video where she's like made over to look like sort of more dirty and overly sexy, and then she's like sucked in this machine and flying around. It's really not a song about being in love or being happy. She's talking about not being able to breathe. And she got away with it, but she's had to pull back on her career and make other career choices in order to get away from them because, these are guys that actually were responsible for Holly Berry being chased around the LA area and all the different car accidents. Like, there's been a lot of drama because of them, and we're really at a point where, if you're still confused, like, I had trouble even trying to work for my home health company because they were harassing the home health company. So I couldn't even, like, go and actually get paid to take care of people who actually needed help that had neurocognitive disorders. Like, I've tried to work in restaurants where they've attacked me. It's been ridiculous. They've made the Department of Labor really angry, and the Department of Labor actually ended up investigating more weapons as a result. It's a really serious issue. And, I just want people to understand, like, I'm sorry if you feel like, you really need to know who you employ because if you hire those guys, they haven't been doing their own work. And they've been relying on myself and other people to do the work and not paying us. And I was one of the worst cases. We're talking about like $30 million amount owed at this point that they could probably never pay because they don't have any money. And the reality that there's all these other people who were misled by them and defrauded by them. That JLo's entire career was just one big fraud case. And that I was somebody who would have been happy to go work in the sciences or just anything else where I made a regular living. And they demanded I work on the arts for them for free, which is ridiculous. It wasn't that I was some weirdo who just was mad and wanted to be on stage. It was that I was trained to sing professionally, told I couldn't do that, and I had to give my voice and my work over to other people who don't sing and can't dance and are not artists, and then told that I wasn't allowed to go to medical school, and then had my nursing school and experience interrupted by them as well. And that there was a huge amount of cult behavior and brainwashing involved in all of this, and that is what you need to understand. So don't ever ask me to provide anything for free again. Don't ever ask me if I work on these projects for these other people again, because I don't. And just recognize that that's who they are and keep your kids away from people. As far as the buried imaging and the films and everything, that's what I wanted you to be aware of. As far as the Barbie film, I know CA had some parts in that film, some hand in it, but it really was created by them. And it's a really disgusting film when you get into tearing it apart. I'm just really glad most Americans don't bother to go to the movies anymore. I certainly don't. And I don't even bother watching anything else that comes out, really. I don't have time. I'm a busy person. I got real things to do. And, I like to be active when I'm not working. So I just don't have time for them or whatever's wrong with them anymore. It's like, sorry, you're really dysfunctional and weird and want to keep slaves, but the rest of us have better things to do. And that's the reality about it. So anyway, so this was our edition of Simply Stated. And as far as singing, I think I'll just stick with the little riff from En Vogue going, never gonna get it, never gonna get it, never gonna get it, never get it. Have a good one. This has been an edition of Simply Stated.